Hello, and welcome to Notes and Notions. If you are someone like me who is somewhat interested in astrology, maybe this episode will interest you. In any case, you can listen while you are vacuuming your house or doing some other mundane work. Or you can watch me and laugh at me as I trip over some words. So, let's dive into the history of astrology. Observing the stars and celestial cycles predates written history. Ancient people tracked celestial movements to navigate, measure time, and interpret natural phenomena, suggesting that astrology was humanity's first attempt to impose order on the chaos of life. Astrology first appeared in Babylon, modern-day in Iraq, around 2000 BC. Babylon was a center of learning and innovation, where priests meticulously observed the stars to understand the god's will and influence over the earthly events. The Babylonians carefully watched the movements of the stars and planets, believing they were connected to the will of the gods. They divided the sky into 12 parts, creating the zodiac, and used it to predict events, not for individuals, but for kings and empires. One famous Babylonian story tells of King Ashurbanipal. His astrologers warned him that a lunar eclipse would bring a danger. To protect the kingdom, a substitute king was put in place to take the bad luck. When the eclipse passed, the real king returned, and the substitute job was done. This story shows how much power astrology had in guiding important decisions. For the Babylonians, astrology wasn't just about prediction. It was a way of understanding the universe. They saw the heavens and earth as connected, with patterns in the sky reflecting patterns in life. This idea of cosmic unity, that everything is linked, influenced how people thought about the world for centuries. As Babylonian influence spread, so did its ideas. The zodiac crossed border and took new meanings, eventually finding its way to Greece. The Egyptians added their knowledge of astronomy and deities, and in that way they have laid a foundation for the synthesis of astrological thought that would later influence the Greeks. By the 4th century BC, the Babylonian system of astrology had crossed borders, finding a new home in Greece. Let's start with Pythagoras, the guy who gave us that fun little triangle equation, the Pythagorean theorem. But Pythagoras wasn't just about math. He was also a cosmic philosopher. He believed the universe was a harmonious system, like a perfectly tuned musical instrument. And the planets were part of his grand symphony, each one playing its own note in the music of the spheres. Building on Pythagoras' ideas, Plato believed that the soul was connected to the cosmos, and understanding the stars could help you understand yourself. This idea that the heavens and the human psyche are linked would become one of astrology's core principles. The Greeks didn't just philosophize about the stars, they systematized astrology. They created the thing we know now, Hellenistic astrology. This was when natal charts were introduced, a snapshot of the sky at the exact moment you were born. While Plato and others planted the philosophical seeds, it took someone like Claudius Ptolemy to organize it all into a system that could be used practically. Fast forward to the 2nd century AD, and we meet Claudius Ptolemy, a Greco-Roman scholar based in Alexandria. Ptolemy wasn't just an astrologer. He was an astronomer, geographer, and mathematician, a true Renaissance man before the Renaissance was even a thing. Ptolemy's Tetrabiblos became the definite manual for astrology, laying out the rules for how the positions of the planets and stars influence life on Earth. Importantly, Ptolemy didn't claim that the stars controlled us. Instead, he argued they coincided with patterns in the natural world. What made Ptolemy different was his scientific mindset. He treated astrology as a rational system, using observation and logic to back up his claims. But even back then, not everyone was on board with astrology. Roman philosopher Cicero famously poked holes in it. He had some serious doubts about astrology. He famously asked, "How can twins, born at the same time and under the same stars, can have such different lives?" And it's a solid point. If astrology is universal, why doesn't it apply equally to everyone? Astrologers responded by pointing out that the stars didn't act in isolation. Free will, upbringing, and external events also played a role. The stars, they argued, set the stage, but it was up to humans to perform the play. It's funny to think how astrology today is dismissed as a superstition, as something, superficial. Back then, in ancient times, it was debated by, priests, scholars, philosophers, famous Greek philosophers. They saw astrology as, a kind of maybe proto-philosophy, like a way that can give answer to some life's questions. Interesting. Anyway, moving on. By the time astrology spread across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia, it was no longer just about kings or personal destinies. It was bumping up against something even more powerful: religion. In Judaism, the stars were seen as part of God's creation, but interpreting them to predict the futures, it was a no-go. Astrology suggested that celestial movements influenced human fate, but Judaism emphasized that only God had control over the future. However, not all Jewish thinkers rejected astrology outright. Within Kabbalah, the mystical side of Judaism, the stars were seen as part of God's grand design. If God made the heavens, surely their patterns held some meaning. When Christianity began to spread, astrology faced a lot of resistance. Early church feared it undermined God's omnipotence. After all, if the stars could predict your fate, what was the point of prayer? In the 4th century, the Council of Laodicea banned clergy from practicing astrology. But despite this, astrology had its moments even in the Christian world. During the Middle Ages, some priests and even popes consulted astrologers. Take Pope Sixtus IV, for example. He reportedly consulted astrologers to pick the best time for laying the cornerstone for a cathedral. Then there was Thomas Aquinas, one of the most influential Christian philosophers. Aquinas argued that astrology was acceptable as long as its focus is on natural influences rather than trying to control free will. In his view, the stars could affect the body like the weather, but not the soul. It was a theological tightrope walk, but it allowed astrology to survive in Christian Europe. Islamic scholars also wrestled with astrology. The Quran emphasized that Allah alone knows the future. But here's the twist. While fortune-telling was condemned, practical uses of astrology flourished in the Islamic world. Scholars used it for medicine, agriculture, and even navigation. They distinguished between astronomy, the science of observing the sky, and astrology, the science of interpreting them. One of the most famous Islamic scholars, Al-Biruni, wrote extensively on both astronomy and astrology. He saw astrology as part science, part art, but always secondary to the divine will. Unlike the Abrahamic religion, Hinduism fully embraced astrology as a sacred discipline, known as Jyotish. Even today, astrology is a part of Hindu culture, influencing everything from marriage to business decisions. In China, astrology was tied to Taoism, which emphasized harmony between humans and the cosmos. The Chinese zodiac, with its 12 animal signs, reflected the belief that celestial patterns were part of the natural order. Astrology wasn't just tolerated, it was celebrated as a way to align with the Tao. What's fascinating is how astrology managed to adapt to these different religious frameworks. In some cases, it was outright banned. In others, it found a way to fit in, focusing on natural patterns instead of divine intervention. And now we're coming to the golden age of astrology, the Renaissance or Renaissance. During the Renaissance, the astrology was considered a legitimate field of study, blending with astronomy, medicine, and art. Scholars believed that understanding the heavens could lead to a deeper understanding of the human body, the natural world, and even the divine. One of the key figures of this era was Marsilio Ficino, a philosopher and priest who was obsessed with the idea of cosmic harmony. Ficino believed that the planets were not just distinct objects. They were spiritual forces that could influence our emotions, health, and even our creativity. Oh, okay, I guess planets influence my creativity right now. He argued that if we align ourselves with the planetary energies, that could help us live more balanced and fulfilling lives. Actually, we believe that today, at least people who believe in astrology. Then, there's Johannes Kepler, the man who gave us the laws of planetary motion. You'd think he'd be all science and no mysticism, but Kepler was deeply interested in astrology. In fact, he worked as a court astrologer, creating horoscopes for nobles while calculating the orbits of the planets. Like Neil deGrasse Tyson, can you imagine him doing horoscopes, natal charts for Hollywood elite while, teaching physics or... Anyway, back then, astrology wasn't just for scholars. Artists used it as an inspiration for their work. Take Sandro Botticelli and the birth of Venus, Raphael, the School of Athens, Michelangelo, the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Doctors, meanwhile, relied on astrological charts to diagnose illnesses and determine the best time for treatments. So, back then we had medical charts and astrological charts. So, doctors took two charts to take care of you and to make a decision on your treatment and when will you start. Interesting. Okay. Astrology became trendy among the elite. Wealthy patrons hired astrologers not only for guidance, but also as a status symbol. But as the Renaissance gave way to the Enlightenment, astrology faced a reckoning. The scientific revolution, led by figures like Galileo Galilei and Isaac Newton, brought a new emphasis on empirical evidence and experimentation. By the 18th century, astrology was losing its importance. Universities stopped teaching it and people started seeing it as superstition. Once a key part for intellectual life, now was mostly found in almanacs and used for entertainment. But then something unexpected happened. As the 20th century unfolded, astrology made a dramatic comeback, not in the halls of academia, but in the hearts and minds of ordinary people. The 1960s were a time of rebellion, individuality, and spiritual awakening. People were rejecting traditional norms and searching for new ways to understand themselves and the world. This is when the "what's your sign" phenomenon really took off. Sun sign astrology, based solely on your birthday, became widely popular thanks to newspapers and magazines printing daily horoscopes. It was a way to challenge societal structure, explore alternative spiritualities, and embrace individuality. In a world full of chaos, civil rights struggles, anti-war protests, and cultural revolutions, the stars offered a sense of order and connection. Around the same time, astrology found a surprising ally in Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychologist. He was fascinated by myths, archetypes, and the subconscious minds, and he saw astrology as a symbolic language that could help people explore these inner realms. Jung often used astrological charts in his practice, not to predict the future, but to understand his patients' personalities and life patterns. He believed the position of the planets reflected archetypes that resonated deeply with the human psyche. Astrology represents the summation of all psychological knowledge of antiquity, Jung once said. For him, it wasn't about fate, it was about understanding the stories we tell ourselves. Fast forward to the 21st century, and astrology is more accessible than ever. The rise of the internet brought astrology to everyone's fingertips. Daily horoscopes, birth chart calculators, and compatibility tests became just a click away. Platforms like Instagram and TikTok have given astrology a whole new vibe and made it fun and shareable. Of course, not everyone is on board. Scientists and skeptics continue to dismiss astrology as pseudoscience. They argue that it lacks empirical evidence and often relies on vague interpretations that could apply to anyone. Yet, astrology endures. Why? Because it's not really about science, it's about meaning. In a world that often feels chaotic and disconnected, astrology offers a sense of order and belonging. It reminds us that we are part of something bigger, even if we don't fully understand it. Astrology has come a long way since those ancient Babylonian priests. It's been a tool for kings, a topic for philosophers, and a guide for ordinary people. And through it all, it has adapted, evolved, and persisted. So next time you glance at your horoscope or laugh at an astrology meme, remember, you're part of a story that has been written in the stars for thousands of years. And that's pretty magical, isn't it? Thank you so much for tuning in for this first video episode of Notes in Ocean podcast. This is actually the fourth time that I'm trying to record this. And because some of you told me, actually one person told me, and that was my nephew, who is a subscriber. He told me that he's not actually reading my blog posts on my Substack. So I thought maybe there are some others among you, my loyal subscribers, all 14 of you, that are not so keen on the written content. I really enjoy creating this, although it's really nerve-wracking sometimes. If you like what you heard, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. And we can say that this episode was like a quick overview of the history of astrology, something like History of Astrology 101. If you'd like me to dive deeper into specific aspects, please feel free and let me know. And also, if you have any other topic that you would like to suggest that I can go and explore a bit more, again, please leave it in the comment or reach out to me. And one more thing, if you would like to be a guest on this podcast and discuss some topic or present some topics that you are passionate about, again, I would be more than happy to be your host and to record it together. That's it for now. Thank you and take care. Bye-bye.